Hi everyone, so today let's all talk about photosynthesis and its two stages. Photosynthesis is the process that uses water, carbon dioxide, and light to produce sugar such as glucose and oxygen gas. So photosynthesis happens inside the chloroplast, which also has the pigment chlorophyll, which is responsible for absorbing light energy. So the two stages of photosynthesis are light-dependent reactions, which occurs inside the thylakoid within the chloroplast, and the light-independent reactions, which is basically the Calvin cycle or also known as dark reactions, occurs in the stroma of the chloroplast. So let's have a quick summary of these stages. So in light-dependent reactions, it oxidizes water into oxygen gas. And remember that if an oxidation happens, there will be a reduction reaction. So oxidation involves with the loss of electrons. And those electrons will be used by NADP plus to be reduced to NADPH. And ATP will be produced by chemiosmosis by an enzyme called ATP synthase by combining ADP plus phosphate, so it will make ATP. So the reactants of light dependent reactions are water, NADP plus, and ADP plus phosphate, and the products will be oxygen, NADPH, and ATP. While in Calvin cycle, on the other hand, it takes carbon dioxide and reduces it into glucose. Now because that's a reductive process, oxidation has to happen somewhere. NADPH is oxidized back into NADP+. Carbon dioxide ultimately receives those electrons and turns it into glucose. While ATP, which is used to power that process, will be converted back into ADP plus phosphate, and it will energize the Calvin cycle, giving it the energy to convert carbon dioxide into glucose. So the reactants of Calvin cycle are carbon dioxide, NADPH, and ATP, and the products will be glucose, NADP plus, and ADP plus phosphate. So that's all about the summary of the two stages of photosynthesis. So let's talk more about light-dependent reactions. What we see here is the electron transport chain inside the thylakoid membrane. First thing that is going to happen, that is a light particle will hit photosystem 2, and it's going to excite the electrons in chlorophyll. So chlorophyll will lose its electrons, which will flow inside this mobile electron carrier called plastoquinone. Now because chlorophyll lost electrons, it needs to replenish those electrons from water, oxidizing it into oxygen gas. So one water molecule produces one oxygen, and it's going to give off two hydrogen ions. Now plastoquinone is going to carry the electrons to cytochrome B6F complex, and as the electrons pass through that complex, what's going to happen next is it's going to pump protons from the stroma that is outside the thylakoid space. So photon concentration in the stroma is going to decrease, while inside the thylakoid is going to increase, producing a concentration gradient. Now the electrons will continue to journey from B6F complex to this peripheral protein called plastocyanin. This is a copper containing protein, and it's going to transfer those electrons into photosystem 1. Now from this journey, the electrons have lost some of its energy. What's going to happen here is the electrons will gain more energy by being struck by another photon of light. And next, the electrons will move to another peripheral protein called ferrodoxin, which is an iron sulfur protein, and it's going to carry the electrons to NADP reductase. NADP reductase is also a peripheral protein, but it is also an enzyme. This enzyme is going to reduce NADP by accepting those electrons along with a hydrogen ion, reducing NADP plus into NADPH. So because there is a buildup of hydrogen ion on the inner thylakoid space, and there is very little hydrogen ions in the stroma, due to this concentration gradient, these hydrogen ions will begin to flow through an enzyme called ATP synthase in the process known as chemiosmosis. As those hydrogen ions flow through that enzyme, this protein will rotate, and it's going to combine ADP plus phosphate to make ATP. So that's how the electron transport chain works in photosynthesis. So we can see here that is water is oxidized into oxygen gas, and NADP plus here is reduced into NADPH, and ATP synthase is used to produce ATP. That's all.
Hello guys, I'm Rave. I'm Randy Sabillano. So for today's video, we will tackle about Calvin cycle. So what is Calvin cycle? Calvin cycle, or also called as Stark reaction, is a process which come after the light dependent reaction, or the LDR. So Calvin cycle or dark reaction, why is it called dark reaction? It is called dark reaction because this process doesn't use light, or this don't need light. So in Calvin cycle, we have 3 stages on this process. So the first stage is carbon fixation. So first phase, carbon dioxide fixation, basically captures the carbon dioxide here. The carbon dioxide is attached to RuBP from the air, so it can be used in the reaction. To do this, carbon dioxide is attached to RuBP, a 5 carbon molecule. So here, it will come here to here. The enzymes used in this reaction is called Rubisco, and the result of the reaction is an unstable 6 carbon molecule that quickly splits into 3 carbon molecules called 3 3-phosphoglycerate here. Next is the process of converting the carbon dioxide to carbohydrate begins in the stage 2. So this phase is called the carbon dioxide reduction, because when adding electrons and energy to the carbon dioxide molecule during this phase, a sequence of reactions use NADPH and some of the ATP from the light reactions. These molecules supply the needed electrons and energy for carbon dioxide reduction. Here. Electrons are added from NADPH and through a series of reactions. Here. 3PG is reduced to from G3P, a carbohydrate. ADP and NADP plus return to the thylakoids to be converted back ATP and NADPH by the light reactions. One of these G3P molecules is set aside here. Here it will set aside or building block for glucose. But the majority of the G3P molecules move form and into the third phase of the Calvin cycle, or the stage 3 regeneration of RUBP. This phase, ATP is used to combine the rest of the G3P molecules to form RUBP molecules. This RUBP then combined with additional carbon dioxide molecules continuing the carbon reaction to form a glucose molecule. The cycle actually has to turn 6 times because each turn of the cycle adds only one carbon atom from the incoming carbon dioxide. It's important to remember that the Calvin cycle is dependent on the light reactions, which provide NADPH and ATP, which is turn provide the electrons and energy needed to form carbohydrates. Thank you.